How
Yep,
you guys
yep. How
doing,
you
man?
doing, Dave? Benny? Awesome. It's great to be back on the air. Great to be live on YouTube.
Absolutely, man. Well, we weren't on last week. It was just a couple of hectic things why we couldn't get on. Oh yeah, my power went out. That's right. My power
Yeah.
went out, so I had nothing. I don't know what happened in our neighborhood. Actually, I do know what happened, but so that's why we couldn't make it last week. But now we're here. We're back up. Paid my electric bill before anybody starts making any jabs at me saying, "Oh, you got to pay your electric bill, Dave." I did pay it this time here, huh? Anyways, man, um, really exciting start of the year. We have the first upset of the year in boxing, which is Julian Williams went in, being the undisputed 154 champion, and Jason Rosario, who really, honestly, not a lot of folks knew a lot about him. Really, ourselves, because we had talked about that fight 2 weeks ago, stating that we kind of more or less felt like this was a keep busy fight for
Yeah.
Julian Williams. I'm not sure. Are we up on YouTube yet here, Kenny? Oh, yes, we are. We definitely are. So, dun, 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 dun. I don't know if you guys know what I got
Yeah.
here, baby. Ah, look at this over here. Huh? Who would have thought that this guy here, the banana, would have really got the upset? Who would have thought he would have came out,
Well,
with a bunch of banana arms and outlanding, outmuscling uh, Williams of Milcar?
well, you know what? You said it correctly, David. Going into this fight, kind of when we went over the early part of the 2020 schedule 2 weeks ago, I kind of brought it up as almost a layup for J Rock. I thought this was going to be kind of like you said, a keep busy fight. But you know what? Right before the fight started, during the introductions, I saw the Uruguayan Samson Lekchowitz, the manager, kind of and slash promoter who brings in a lot of the international guys, especially from the Caribbean, Central America, and South America. When I saw him standing in the corner, I knew that it was going to be a fight because I up until that point I was not actually aware that he was managing
I
Banana,
know that.
and
Yep.
I have yet to see a Samson fighter that does not come and absolutely bring it in the ring. Like he's got a long line of guys that he's introduced to the U.S. fight fans, and they
Especially
always
Pacquiao.
bring it. Yeah, especially
You know?
Pacquiao.
Yep. I mean,
Yeah,
he's brought a lot of guys over that have really nobody knew a whole lot about. And I mean, Samson's got a good eye. I mean, not all of them are pick winners, but definitely his eye of really seeing what the potential that these guys can either form into becoming or already are. He knows how to do it. I'm trying to think of the top of the head off of my head right now of all the guys that he has. I want to say he also discovered like Sergio Martinez, who he later
yeah,
on
he did.
signed on to Lou DiBella. You know what I mean? So yeah,
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So he really does go into the uh, 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 South America, and he really digs up a lot of talent. Not just there too. I mean, I'm trying to remember a name that he had from the UK, who also he had helped get developed. So he's got a really keen eye of raw talent because Jason Rosario to me was a guy seen his couple of fights, which some were mentioned that well, I mean not mentioned, but possibly could have been the other way around. There were some certain fans that felt that the Dominican kid was that it was stolen away from him. They thought that he had done enough to win some fights, but it's still I was very reserved because he what I've seen of him. I don't know if you guys have seen him here, but what I've seen, he got hit a lot, kind of slow. Still didn't seem like he knew how to get his feet underneath them. Still, there was some unsureness about his style of what he wanted to do. But this past Saturday night, I saw a kid that was just extremely possessed, man. And he was there to win. You could see it in his eyes. I mean, you saw it right there. Like nothing else mattered around him when he stepped in that ring except for Julian Williams. My problem with Julian Williams is, guys, I I tend to believe that he went in with this match still riding off of the Jared Hurd win, still thinking that that style that helped him win against Gerald Hurd was going to help him win against a tall Jason Rosario, who they probably thought, as well as many of us thought, that Rosario was not even as good or as close as being good as what Hurd was able to bring at the 154 division. Total big bad game plan. What was that?
I was just going to say there's at least three intangibles that I underestimated. One was just his toughness. I mean, the guy could take all of J-Rock's shots. Two was his conditioning, which you could kind of see if you looked at his conditioning or his body, at least in the weigh-in. Like he was conditioned for this fight. And the third thing I would say was his punch variety. He threw a lot of different shots. He went to the body and he went to the head. And there was a lot of punch variety. I wasn't anticipating that.
It was like fourth, fifth round. Yeah,
Yeah.
really,
Including to the
really
body.
powerful. Oh, yo, God, his body shots were just vicious. Even from the first round, the body shot
Yeah.
was really evident. And this is the thing what I like about Rosario. They studied, they watched Williams. One thing that Williams has been exposed with, where Hurd couldn't capitalize, was that Williams has been exposed and he's acceptable to uppercuts. He leads in with his head. If you ever watch his style, he's always dipping his head to try to get under your shot so he can land his shots. So Rosario saw that and wanted to pick him up. Second thing that Rosario did that I thought it was just beautiful, which Kenny you mentioned, was not only did he stay busy with Williams and make Williams actually fight, he made Williams fight to try to stay in the pocket with them, but he allowed Williams to empty the tank and stick around for that receipt. He would counter every time Williams finished a shot or a big punch. He immediately returned the favor to Williams, which in Williams, and I think even in his Breadman's surprise, they weren't expecting that. Not one bit. That this so-called kid that's supposed to be limited and not very fast was actually, his reflex were the most telling and the most fast thing that was in that fight. His reflex really, in my opinion, is what took over the second and all the way down to the fifth round.
Yeah, he was counter punching very successfully. And again, just like you said, David, whenever he got hit with a shot that the commentators, who I am fans of generally, but I felt that they were quite biased in this fight. Whenever they were lauding a shot landed by J-Rock, Banana came back just as hard and oftentimes with a combination. And you could see that J-Rock was challenged because whether it was in the middle of the ring or on the ropes, he was getting beat up. There really wasn't a safe space for him in terms of where he could box and be at an advantage. I mean, regardless of where it was in the ring, he was pretty much getting dominated. Even in the first round, which is the only round I felt might have gone to J-Rock, he was getting touched. And again, the commentators never mentioned it. You could see his face was puffy, definitely on the right side, but also on the left side as well.
Yeah, he was definitely marked up.
My thing. Sorry, go ahead, David.
No, go ahead, because I think me and you were going to say the same thing. Go for it.
Yeah, we might. I mean, look, I think that Lennox Lewis has been out of the commentating game for a while. I mean, anyone who knows me knows that Lennox Lewis was one of my favorite athletes, not just boxers, when I was growing up. I've got a lot of respect for Lennox Lewis, but I think that because he's kind of just getting into commentating again, that he's probably following a producer's script a lot of the times. And one thing you'll notice about PBC shows, I like the shows, they're very entertaining, but the PBC shows are almost very scripted for a sporting event, you know? They've got their
Absolutely.
montages, they've got their kind of almost like trailer type promotional things that you'd expect to see for a TV show or a movie. They're doing it with boxing. And oftentimes it's very clear on a PBC show who's the A side, who's the B side, and they just regurgitate the narrative over and over again. I think a lot of the times when the PBC commentators are speaking to the audience, they're speaking to the audience more as a general sports fan than they are as like a boxing fan who you'd already expect to know a lot about these guys. So they're pushing a narrative. And I think when Lennox and even Joe Goosen, again, who's kind of newer to commentating, they're only human beings. When a producer's in your headphones saying this, saying that, reminding you to say this, reminding you to say that, there's going to be some bias. And in Lennox's case, I think it took him like 2, maybe 3 rounds before he's like, you know what, fuck this. I just got to start calling the fight. And then he started giving Banana all his credit, if that makes sense.
No, that's exactly what I saw. Even in my taste of the prospect, which was Joe Spencer, I'm a fight fan that doesn't want to be force-fed a fighter. I have my own eyes. I have my own independent thoughts. Let me make that decision of whether or not this guy's the goods. But when you're trying to tell me over and over and over that he's going to be something big and special, when right now, right in front of me, I'm witnessing a kid struggling. And then here's another thing. I wanted to mention this. Maybe it's me, but I know for a fact if I'm training a kid and I'm training anybody in any certain thing in any area, and I see them go off and ask another person that's not under their tutelage to grade them, I would take that an offense. So his father trainer, when Joe Spencer, after his fight, walks over to Joe Goosen and Lennox Lewis and goes like, hey, what did I do wrong? You should automatically entrust what your corner's saying. You should automatically go and ask them what they thought and what they were doing, or better yet, listen to what they were saying. Then later on, after all the smoke is cleared, then you go, in my opinion, you go and ask these other guys an opinion. But in my opinion, Spencer's camp should have been a little upset with that, because that tells me everything. He's not really sure, guys, who he is and who he wants to be yet. He might want to be just a pleaser. And we all know what happens with pleasers. They never reach that peak. They can never gain that confidence of a champion. He didn't fight like a champion to me. He fought like a kid that's still trying to figure out, does he belong in the pro games, or is he still an amateur standout? I'm not sure yet with him yet. So for me, I'm not going to put the tail on the donkey just yet. Banana.
Yeah, unified camp.
Who, Jason? Mhm. I think everybody at that 154 division right now, it's always for the taking. I don't really see any of them being the ultra dominant guy. I think Hurd still there's a clear map of how to defeat him. There's a clear way of defeating Charlo, outbox him, make him do certain commitments where he gets flustered, because Charlo to me is a headhunter, and a lot of times he wants to impress by knocking you out. He lets too much emotion sometimes just get in that way. Tony Harrison, sometimes just celebrates too much and he loses focus when it gets down to the later stretch of the fight. Uh, you know, all these guys, Edison Lara is an older
I was just about
warrior.
to
His
mention
legs are
that.
not. Yeah, he's not that mobile anymore. Now he's
No.
willing to stand and trade and take the shots that he because he's got to return big shots and get himself out of trouble. So anybody at 154, in my opinion, is a one fight away of losing that title. But seeing what I saw with Jason Rosario is that what we've seen of fighters that come from a place that is very hard ridden, right? They
Yeah.
have to they fight for everything that's given to them. Those guys are the ones, man, that once they clench their teeth onto something, they're like pet bulls. It's very hard to draw out of their mouths. The only time you saw a guy that it went over the top of their head, it got too big in their head, and they just lost everything immediately was like in Ricardo Mayorga because he played a character rather than playing who he should have been, which is a fighter. Take it serious. I don't see that happening with Rosario. To me, I saw very humble and very focused, very focused. Now, if this kid can stay, focused and hardworking, I don't know, guys. I think he's going to be very difficult. And now having the title, they always say, once you get that title, you always jump up 2 steps up the ladder in mind frame. So,
Yeah, he's
like Lennox,
yeah.
just the last thing I'll say. Like Lennox Lewis said, it's easy to win the title, but it's harder to keep it. And I think that this kid may fight very hard to keep it unless he allows, all the fruits of winning that title interfere in his training camp, interfere on how it changed the life. That definitely is going to change the life for him and his family. So hopefully he just stays up on top of his head. Like he's got to come out the way he performed Saturday, dude. He's got to come out every single time.
Yeah. Well, you could also add Andy Ruiz to that list amongst many others. But I,
Right.
I was gonna say that. Look, David, I agree. He wins the title. He can only be more confident in his abilities now. But one thing that really impressed me is that he was willing, and I can only imagine will continue to be willing to engage in like wars of attrition with guys. And if
Yeah.
he's willing to do that, you look through the list of the guys at 154, the top dogs. They're all beatable if he's willing to stick to that style. Now, it's not necessarily a style that's great for longevity, but for a few fights of a stretch, look, as great as a boxer as Eric Landy is and definitely was, you said it yourself, master boxer, but his legs are old. He can't do what he used to do. You look at Jared Hurd. Jared Hurd gasses out and, by all accounts, struggles to make 154, right?
Right.
We've already seen that Charlo can be beat at 154. So just look down, and he's beat J-Rock already. So you just look down the list. Yeah, Kenny, I think this guy
wrong
is,
Charlo.
is
That's the wrong Charlo, though. The Charlo that beat J-Rock is at 160. This Charlo hasn't fought J-Rock.
No, I'm saying the Charlo that lost at 154, the Charlo that lost to Harrison. He's already been beat at 154.
Right.
That's the
you're
Charlo I'm
sorry.
talking about.
Yeah.
Okay. The other Charlo's undefeated. So they're all beatable, is what I'm saying.
Right.
And look, his confidence can only be sky high. I mean, I hope they give him a parade when he gets back to Santo Domingo. I think it's a huge accomplishment. He's a unified champ. He went into a guy's hometown on his show where he was the favorite, and the network was biased and essentially cheering for the A side for the first part of the fight. It was a tremendous accomplishment what he was able to do, and I only wish him the best because, as you guys know, I'm someone who always roots for the underdog.
Yeah. Here's the thing is that what is also in his favor for Jason Rosario is his size. I mean, because, Williams to me, and I said this 2 weeks ago, I said Williams to me was a guy that was a fight away of losing that title. And a lot of reasons why I believe that. One is that, I'll be honest with you guys, I've never been high for J-Rock. I saw a lot of flaws in the kid. I also thought that his trainer and himself talked way too much as if they accomplished way beyond what they've done already. And to me, that was like, guys, you guys need to slow your rolls a little bit. You'll have to actually lay the stones down before you start walking that talk. Where right now, Jason, in my opinion, got that size. He can go forward. Imagine though, guys, if he learns how to jab correctly. Imagine when he starts learning how to use that footwork. Now that he's got the title, he's going to be able to have more access to those types of tools because now there's going to be money filtered through him in order to get to those destinations and stuff. So I'm really excited to see what they're going to do with this kid. My only concern though is this one thing: is are they going to let him fight this year again? Or are they going to do what they've been doing with a lot of these PBC fighters, which is allow them only to fight once a year? For an example, this may be PBC's fault or J-Rock and his team's fault. They only fought last year, that one fight, the big fight with Hurt, and after that, guess what? They didn't really do much. They didn't do a whole lot, you know? So in my opinion, the reason why these guys don't win every fight and they're so beatable is because the inactivity really hurts a lot of these fighters. They have to stay active. They really do. You know, in order for you to sharpen up your tools, you just can't do it in the gym. You have to do it where it counts the most, where it's going to be competitive the most, which is on a fight night. I, I, I'm fine if he wants to do his mandatory, but you know what? You need to fight two more times this year. Fight your mandatory, and then fight either Charlo, fight either Hurd, or fight either Laura. Fight any one of those guys that have a name to that, so that we can see whether or not you are working on other things, to see whether or not that the intense style that you brought this past weekend on Saturday, it's still going through you throughout the year. You know what I mean? I mean, because if I'm Charlo and them, I'm gonna be fighting to get that fight next. You know, because one thing that we've seen with Charlo, he's a big kid too. That's why I think, to me, out of all the other guys we just mentioned, Charlo and him make the most interesting because they're both very big 154-pound fighters. They both have big, heavy hands. I think though, and I don't know what you guys think, but I think that Jason Zaro may have the more heavier hands than Charlo because of his he's capable of knocking you out with both hands. But I also think, what happened?
I was just saying he just might, David. Yeah.
I think so, you know, but the overall skill level, I would lean with Charlo, but I can't even say that. I can't even say that Charlo wouldn't be that intense or willing to fall apart the way Williams did. Because what I saw with Williams, even though he said "wow" after the ref jumped in and stopped the fight, his body language in that fourth round, guys, I was like, this guy's done. His body doesn't want to be there no more.
Mentally, and physically, he at least physically he capitulated. And I'm not saying that disparagingly. He was eating vicious shots, especially to the body. As it relates to the unification fight, you know, the WBC is a lot more accommodating. I think the number one challenger to Charlo right now is Erickson Lubin. I'm not too excited about that fight. I don't think Lubin's ready for it. The last time Lubin stepped up, I mean, he really showed that there's a difference between the contender level and the championship level. I think the resistance to a unification fight would likely come more from the IBF, which is a lot stricter with enforcing their mandatories than the other sanctioning bodies. So if anyone's going to have to defend against mandatories, I think it's actually going to be Rosario more than Charlo. That's just my opinion.
Very true.
I'm not I'm not saying he's a bad fighter, Kenny. I just don't know. I just don't know if he's ready uh, to step up against Charlo. I mean, look at it. Look at who he's beat in his last few fights. He's beaten Silverio Ortiz, Ishe Smith, Zakaria Atu, and Nathaniel Gallimore, who he went a unanimous decision, 12 rounds with. Those were all confidence building fights. Personally, I think he could give Charlo a competitive fight. I just think he needs a little bit more seasoning. I think he was rushed in the first fight. It has nothing against Lubin. If anything, I'm taking a jab more at his management for putting him in that position so early.
I think the hold on real quick. I think the difference, though, Kenny, my opinion, the difference between Jason Rosario and a Jared Hurd is that Hurd was like a slow. He was like a slow Asami. You know what I mean? Like you saw him from a distance coming through with the waves. Whereas for my taste, with Jason Rosario, he was like a whirlwind automatically. I mean, even in that first round, which I didn't think, I think it was a very close round, and I could see people giving it to Williams. But I thought he came on immediately. Like he wanted the champion at the time to know his presence. Whereas Hurd, he takes 3 or 4 rounds before he starts, letting the juices go through his joints, before he lets his hands start moving. I think that's the huge difference is the intensity of what Rosario had brought, and that's what I'm curious about. Can he continue to bring that every time? And I think you know what, seeing the possession, how he was possessed. I'm sorry, how he was possessed in this fight. Um, I think that that's the only way he can keep holding on to those titles is that he's got to go back continuously to that place where he was at on Saturday night and remind himself that he's this much away of losing everything that he's worked hard for, not just for himself, but for his family, for his country. And I've always said that fighters that have a country behind them are the ones that honestly put more on their line because they're afraid to let their people down. They're fighting for more. They're fighting more for, for not just for themselves, but they're fighting for a lot of other folks that are going to live through them. So, I really like the kid with his performance. I may be a little high on him right now because of what he did. But I just think that, any fight that he goes to right now, I think he could, if he comes out the way he did, he's going to give a lot of folks problem. But not taking anything away from Williams, guys. I wanted to talk a little bit before Kenny, you were going to ask a question, but I just wanted to, bring this up. I think Williams still can come back into the stables of the champions and make a case for himself that he can win the title back. My thing is that what he has to do is go back and look at what he did wrong. One was I thought he was riding off of his win off of Hurd, meaning that he came with the same game plan, thinking that Jason was going to fight the similar style of what Hurd did, which was be a slow starter. Number two was, Breadman gave him some really good advice and telling them to slow down. After he got the cut, he said, "Hey, slow down." But after it kind of stopped there. I didn't hear anything else from him in terms of like I don't know, guys. Why was he taking the fight to Rosario? Why is he not? Why, I mean, he's the better boxer. Why wasn't he not allowing Rosario to come to him and make him make mistakes? That should,
I
Go ahead.
I think I can answer that. I think it was just underestimating Rosario. He wasn't ranked in the top 10. He would think he was ranked 11th. I don't really think they took him that seriously. They probably felt that they could, essentially do what they wanted with him, and it didn't work out. One thing I wanted to say about the comparisons with Hurd, I don't want to underestimate Rosario's boxing ability here. I actually think he's a much better, more highly skilled boxer than Hurd. Hurd
I think so
essentially
too.
relies on his size advantage and kind of, essentially being able to eat shots. He's got very little defense and eventually kind of grinding down his opponents. Rosario was doing things defensively in there. He was blocking shots. He was countering, and also I think his punch variety is a lot better than Hurd's, and I think his quickness is there as well. I do, though, kind of disagree with one thing you said, David, and it's about the Dominican Republic potentially being behind Rosario. I would defer to Kenny to talk more about this, but I remember a fight that I invited Kenny out to over here in New York. It was Felix Diaz versus Terrence Crawford. And, I was in my barber shop the weeks before it. I think I was even there the day of the fight. None of my barbers knew about the fight, cared about the fight. Felix Diaz was an Olympic gold medalist for the DR in 2008. Zero publicity in New York City for him. And New York City's got a huge Dominican population. I mean, you go back to guys like Johan Guzman. Honestly, one of the most highly skilled fighters I've seen, especially when I was growing up and I was watching him. Obviously, his career fizzled after a certain point just due to him not being disciplined. But again, the DR wasn't really behind them. So Kenny can speak more to this being a Dominican American, but just why there has not been support by and large for fighters from within that community.
A knockout artist can always change people's minds, though, guys. And if Jason Rosario, can continue doing the way he did on Saturday night in that type of fashion, I mean, if it's not the Dominican Republic behind him, he's going to get a lot of other Latino communities behind him to support him, But like I said, if he knockout continue with that type of fashion, there's no way of denying this kid. And I don't think Dominicans are going to say, yeah, we don't really care for the guy when he's blowing dudes out. Kenny? Yeah. Ooh.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree.
no. Yeah.
Shout out to
Well,
my
there you
to my
go.
yeah, sorry. No. I I
I'm
personally don't
surprised
see
if he
him
stays at
staying.
160.
No, yeah, I
What
was
did you
about to
think?
say that. He vacated at 175 because he's just not going to fight there anymore. So he vacated the WBO title at
Right.
one at 175 because he decided, he told them that he wasn't going to campaign there. 154, I don't see that. Also, the bigger money is going to be at 168 and 160, but that kind of weight cut I think would be difficult for Canelo. And from what I understand, he was even struggling at 154 towards the end of his campaign.
Right.
You probably remember there was that transition period where he was going to be a middleweight, but he was like having these catch weight fights that weren't quite middleweight. So
Exactly.
yeah, I don't see him going down to 154. Yeah.
I see him. Well, I mean, 160 right now. Look, the alarming thing is that he flirted at 168. Then he decided to flirt with 175. I thought, okay, why is he doing that? There's obviously something there that he's struggling with. He's got big legs, got a big neck. He's got, really honestly, he's very heavy top. So I'm thinking, is he really going to revisit 160? I think the only way he's going to revisit that is either it's got to be a lot of money, or there might be a strong possibility he may pull the same move he was doing, Amilcar, what he was doing at 154, which is a catch weight. Saying, hey, if you want to fight me for the 160 title, but you still have to fight me at 164. Meet me halfway because I can't make that. I think that's a strong possibility. That might start coming back again under his belt, and we may start calling him again the catchweight king, as one time we did. So I think it's kind of interesting what's next for him. But right now, I mean, Callum Smith, B.J. Saunders, anything that Canelo does. I mean, guys, are any of you guys excited about any of those names I just mentioned? I think they're interesting fights, but I don't think those are killer fights for me where I'm like, oh, God, this is going to be really, really good.
I'd like to answer that. So, look, at 160, competitively, I would like to see him against Charlo. But let's be frank, Charlo doesn't have a big fan base and doesn't bring a lot to the table. The bigger fight for him at 160 would probably be in Japan versus Murata, the WBA regular champion. And Canelo's expressed an interest in going to Japan to face Murata. At 168, I was very intrigued by the possibility of him taking on Callum Smith, potentially in Liverpool Football Club Stadium in Liverpool. But then the John Ryder fight happened, and I'm like,
yeah.
Canelo can definitely beat this guy. So,
right.
It's interesting. And then the other thing too is, I'm probably in the minority here. I'm just not interested in the third Triple G fight. I'm just not. So it's a tough one. Canelo's such a big draw. He's got the big contract. He can fight whoever he wants. It doesn't really matter to him. For him, I just think it's the fights that are going to get him up, get him to his peak in terms of his training, and excite him. And it's difficult right now to determine which of the fights would be at the top of that list.
I mean, look, the only fight for me that's going to be exciting is, I know you're done with it. I think a lot of fans are done with the whole Triple G situation, but that to me is the only guy that can be competitive. I mean, if Canelo said I would fight Dermanchenko, the guy that a lot felt that got an up over on Triple G, I would be excited for that fight because I think Dermanchenko is a different look. He's a big middleweight as well, stocky, short, but throws a lot of punches, combinations. But at 168, Callum Smith doesn't excite me just because of what you just mentioned right now, Amilcar. I think the only name that would probably stand out and would probably sell out a whole stadium if PBC said, hey, David Benavidez, let's negotiate with Canelo for 168.
Yeah, I also think that that Billy Joe Saunders would be a competitive fight too, but I kind of see how that would go, and it would be a controversial Canelo wins unanimous decision, much like he did versus Eric Landry Lara. another kind of slick
I,
southpaw.
I don't think
I'm
anybody
just not.
wants to see Canelo anymore in a chase a mouse around. I mean, you look
No,
the Jesus Christ, it's, the Jacobs fight. A lot of folks were not entertained with it. At the end of the day,
I
there's got to be
wasn't.
a value. There's got to be a value of entertainment when you sit down and watch it, whether you're paying the zone. I don't care. This whole thing about like, it's you're only paying $100 a year. It's still $100, guys. You know what I mean? It's still $100 that comes out of my pocket. So you're just telling me as a consumer, the lesser I pay, the more I should be satisfied with what's being thrown at me. No, it's not the way it works. You pay for it. You want to get some entertainment value. So I don't think anybody wants to see Canelo again in a Jacobs type of style fight where it's just enough to get your taste of the honey. I don't know anybody see that, and I don't think you're going to get anything of real entertainment, excitement out of him facing BJ Saunders. The only guys that I see are really up. I mean, I'd rather see him against Benavidez. I'd rather see him if he decides to go back to 104 and play around. I'd rather see him against oh God, what's his name? Excuse me.
Well, Munguia, that's another name that's come out, Munguia, and I'm sure we're going to discuss him before tonight's over.
100. Nah, he's too raw right now. He just doesn't. Yeah.
It's just a name that's come up. You know who I would have liked to see him against?
Pascal.
Oh,
I'd rather see
dude, I was just about to say that fight would be amazing at 175. Amazing fight. But I just don't see it happening, man, because he vacated the title.
Exactly.
He could have tried to unify the WBO with the WBA regular, right?
Yep.
At 175, and bro, that would have been such a fucking good fight. Had those two
That would
got
have been a great
into
fight.
it.
Yep.
Oh my God.
I don't know why he vacated it though, because there's so many guys. I mean, I do know why he vacated it. Think of this, all right? We just had a 175 fight happen at ESPN Plus. Alvarez versus Mike Seals. It was a boring fight. There wasn't a whole lot. They were both being very cautious. Alvarez's style, though, is really, if you don't pay attention the way he fights, he likes to sit back. He likes to allow you to make commitments and be confident. That's how he caught Seals. He knew he was going to be overconfident. He knew he was going to overthrow with his right hand, and bang, he countered him. He dropped him. If you brought up Canelo against Alvarez, that's such a winnable fight for Canelo. Because Canelo he always fights with a certain type of cautiousness in his style, right? He's never one guy that's going to follow through all the time with his punches. He actually keeps you guessing. That's what makes him such a very unpredictable guy. But if you said, hey, he could fight Pascal, he could fight guys like dude, I don't know why I'm having a brain fart. Now you passed it on to me, man.
I think Beterbiev would be a bit too much for him. The reason I say Pascal, the reason I say Pascal is there's a few factors, and John Pascal I've known about and seen him since many years ago when he was an amateur, but he's actually a natural 168. All right, that's right. Number one. So he's not a huge light heavyweight. He's also up there in age, he's also vulnerable and has shown his vulnerabilities. And he's an action-packed fighter that's willing to trade, right? So I think it's a very exciting fight. Versus, as we said, like, a Billy Joe or a Andrade, we've seen those Canelo fights.
It was Jack what? What was his last name? Jack
Badu Jack. Or you mean Marcus Brown?
No, Badu Jack. I like to see Canelo and Badu Jack fight. I think that because Jack comes on early, and he comes on late because I think that he's a big kid. He comes on late. He's had such close, decisions against him that I still think he makes a big fight out of it. The only thing about Pascal was this. The only thing of this, Kenny, about Pascal is that if they were to fight, if they were to make that fight to happen, there would be testing involved. And I'm not sure having Memo Heredia on your side that Memo is going to advise Pascal to go through with that. You know, I'm not saying that Pascal was on anything, but when you got Memo Heredia on your corner, there's got to be a red flag there. There's got to be question marks, you know, like, hey, are they doing any testing? How's it this guy's, you know, this age and he looked like he was out the door, immediately come right back in through the door and be something of a subject at 175 all over again when he looked like he was down and out.
Well, yeah, I mean, but what's funny to me too, Dave, is that Canelo, like you said, you're questioning his decision to vacate at 168 WBO, right? The number one contender at WBO 168 is Gilberto Ramirez, who has been MIA for a while now. You know, that might have been a Zerto Ramirez might have been a very interesting fight for Canelo.
I think
but yeah,
so
you know
too.
what? One of the advantages of being a superstar like Canelo or Floyd of that level is you can kind of pick and choose your opponents, and you know people are willing to bend, and whether it's the catch weights or network affiliations in terms of whether or not they'll fight you. So honestly, we're just playing the Canelo game. All we can really do is wait and see.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly don't think it's going to be a Canelo year, just because I think that they're more or less going to try to figure out what they're going to do next, what's going to, you know, they got to, the unfortunate part is that Canelo is going to fight, but I don't think it's going to be an event. You know, it's not going to be the fights that people are hoping to get, you know, which would be like the Triple G fight. Regardless of what folks are, you know, regardless of how some of us feel like saying, I'm done with the Triple G, to me right now, that's the only really big fight for him to take on DAZN at this immediate time, because DAZN themselves want this fight to happen.
Do you see it happening at 160 or at 168?
I think this is what I think. I think this is interesting because I think that because Triple G has the you know, the Marquez stalking syndrome, that I think he's willing to go to 168 if he wants that fight. I think Triple G would be like, I'll go up there. Why not? You know, I know he's never wanted to do it for anybody else, but I think that Canelo has gotten underneath his skin so much, so bad that, you know, that he feels, I need this fight. I need this fight, not just for the money, but because of the pride factor, that he takes a big chunk and says, I'll go there. I'll go to that division if that's where I have to, you know, find you. I don't see why not. I don't see why he wouldn't do that. You know, why? You know, would you guys oppose him not to do it?
I mean, at the end of the day, I don't think Triple G has much say in the matter. I think he needs to fight much more than Canelo does. I'm sure that the huge contract Triple G signed has a bunch of contingencies, and that he can't just continue to fight the level of opponents that he's fought so far. Not to knock Devenchenko, but you know, the first opponent he fought, I forgot his name already. The guy from the Toronto suburb. Yeah, he's from outside Toronto. He wasn't really that great. He's not going to get many more opponents like that. So it's really up to Canelo. I think Canelo's going to do whatever gives him the advantage. You know, I was just thinking just quick change really quick. I'd like to see Joshua Buatsi at 175 come back. I don't know what he's up to. I'd also like to see Anthony Yarde come back. I'm not too sure what he's up to, and I think that would be a good matchup, those two fighting each other. I know that's a little a left field, but I'd like to see that. Yeah, they're both at 175. That's why I thought.
Joe Smith, don't forget. Joe Smith had a good win.
Yeah.
You know, Joe Smith is up there.
Yeah, he did. I wasn't talking about Canelo fighting them. I just meant Yeah, sorry, Kenny. That's why I said quick switch, and it was out of left field. I was saying I'd like to see those two fight each other. Yeah.
Come on, Kenny. You got to keep up with it, you know?
Yeah.
Kenny was busy with his banana right now. Kenny was
the other fight at 175 that I think would be super interesting at 175 is Beterbiev versus Joe Smith Jr. I'd like to
Oh,
see that.
bro, that's
I
like,
would love to see that
whoo,
fight. Yeah.
that's explosive.
Oh hell yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we got those two subjects here we want to talk about. I mean, you know, Sully Sullivan. I mean, let me ask you guys: how surprised were you that Sullivan got that far with Jaime Murguia on the zone? I mean, I want to root for Murguia. I really do. I speak to so many being in the valley here in Northern California. I'm from the Bay, moved from San Jose, been living here for more than 10 years. So there's a lot of raza that live here, and and I work in the car industry. And big up to Netro because I actually worked on his car today. When you guys called me, remember we were discussing what we were going to talk about. I was working
Yeah.
on his vehicle. So he's a first time listener, man. So welcome to the show, brother. Um, okay, we'll patch in some guys right now. Really quick, we got a couple callers coming on board here, but going back, a lot of guys. I speak to a lot of Mexicanos that are here in the valley, and they were like, "Man, Jaime Murguia, what do you think about him?" And I feel really bad to be honest about him. I'm not excited about him. I don't think that he's very good. He was supposed to. In my look, I think this what spiraled down for him, guys, and I could be completely way off or wrong about it. When he left Robert Alcazar, who was the trainer of Oscar De La Hoya, who I thought did a great run with Oscar from the amateurs to the pro rankings, you know, I started to see some improvement with Morgia with him because that's who you should have stuck with was a guy that really was going to work with what you brought to the table. You know, then he jumped with Eric Morales. I get it. Eric Morales is from Tijuana. I get it. There's going to be more of a bond, I guess you could say. But I haven't seen anything that really truly says that the Hall of Famer, the legend from Tijuana, has improved him. If anything, I've seen a lot of decline, and it could be the decline because he's fighting guys that are actually 154, and he's not fighting these smaller guys that were moving up in weight. So I'm just
Well,
not hyped up about him.
I think there's two things. I think there's two things I jump on there. Sorry, did you have something to
Go
say,
for it.
Kenny? All right. So, firstly, I know I wasn't surprised, and the reason I wasn't surprised about the O'Sullivan lasting so long is not because I'm high on O'Sullivan. I think O'Sullivan owes a lot of his career to his mustache as much as to his actual
Mm.
ability in boxing. And boxing's a sport. Honestly, a lot of the times it's driven by characters, right, and personas. And he's
Right.
carved that kind of niche out there for him with the mustache. Okay, I get it, but the Hogan fight showed a lot of flaws um, that
Right.
Munguia has. Defensive flaws, um, kind of offensive flaws, fighting a guy that can box and move and who throws combination punches, and a guy who's in shape. Hogan went the distance because he was in really good shape and could box. Uh, so no, I wasn't that surprised. And then also he's moving up in weight, so a lot of the physical advantages that he used to have at 154, again against guys that were coming up, like you said, David, from 147, he's not going to have that at 160. In terms of Morales, I want to give Morales a little bit more credit. I mean, obviously, I'm a huge Morales fan. I think anyone who grew up watching fighters in the 90s would be. But I saw Munguia doing some things in the first round or two. Head movement, using his jab a lot, things that you didn't necessarily see in a lot of his previous fights. But it didn't last very long. It's like as soon as he got touched up just a little bit, you could see
Yeah. He was. It
the
was. Yeah.
Morales'
The plan was
effect
thrown out
kind
the
of just
door.
wither away, and he went back to who he was prior to
Yeah.
working with El Terrible. So, I like the kid too. I'm not here to say that he's like the next big guy out of Mexico.
No.
Can't do it.
They're carefully moving them. I applaud Golden Boy. I think they're carefully moving them. And that's exactly what they need to continue to do is to put the right matches in front of him. Any talks of him getting in with Canelo, there's always that game, or it's the kids now, they call it clout. This guy jumping on his clout, but you attach your name to a popular name so that it brings your value up. And I think that's the case here. I don't think they're really serious about putting in Murguia with Canelo. If they didn't want to put him in with Triple G when he had the opportunity, I don't see why they would want to do that at this moment with Canelo where he's at. It's just too early, too soon. I still say he's still young. He still can learn a lot. Allow him to develop and put him in with the right matches.
Would you put him in with a guy like Rob Brandt?
I still say he's still young. He still can learn a lot.
Do you think that would even be
Allow
too
him
much
to
for him?
develop. I think that's a little bit too much for him still.
Would you put him in with a guy like Rob Brandt?
I still say he's still young. He still can learn a lot.
That would even be
Allow
too
him
much
to
for him?
develop. I think that's a little bit too much for him still.
Would you put him in with a guy like Rob Brandt?
I still say he's still young. He still can learn a lot.
That would even be
Allow
too
him
much
to
for him?
develop. I think that's a little bit too much for him still.
Would you put him in with a guy like Rob Brandt?
He's not a boxer either, though, Kenny. He's young. He still can learn a lot.
That would even be
Allow
too
him
much
to
for him?
develop. I think that's a little bit too much for him still.
Would you put him in with a guy like Rob Brandt?
He's not a boxer either, though, Kenny. He's young. He still can learn a lot.
That would even be too much for him?
I think that's a little bit too much for him still.
Would you put him in with a guy like Rob Brandt?
He's not a boxer either, though, Kenny. He's young. He still can learn a lot. Allow him. I think that's a little bit too much for him still.
Would you put him in with a guy like Rob Brandt?
He's not a boxer either, though, Kenny. He's young.
I think that's a little bit too much for him. Would you put him in with a guy like Rob Brandt?
He's not a boxer either, though, Kenny. He's young.
now Munguia's moved up to 160. He's a A-side main event fighter, but we're struggling to come up with a list of opponents for him that he could beat as a guy at that status. You know what I mean? It's not that I'm knocking him. I just don't think who he is in line with his status is in line with where he actually should be right now in his career.
Well, here's the thing though. Let's take that back, okay? Because there's a lot that I agree with you, but then you got to add. There's two things of why Canelo was able to pull what he was able to do. For one, he was far better market than Canelo. I mean, than Murguia. Okay, Murguia is kind of a fresh face. Canelo was already a known fighter in Mexico, you know. So when he came here to the States, immediately, you know, he had more of a draw. You know, immediately a lot of more folks knew who he was. So I think that the stature where he was at, because of the marketing that they did for him before he got to Golden Boy, was his star power already. Murguia, if Murguia had that already with him on his side, I think you would be seeing a lot of these catchweights. I think you'd be seeing a lot of these other fights happening where you're having smaller guys continue to jump up the way Ali was at to fight Murguia, but they don't have that. So right now, to me, what they're doing is hopefully continue to put him in with the Solis of the world. They don't have so that. They can continue marketing him to develop him to get him to exactly what I think a lot of folks are hoping he can end up being, which is an elite. But it's really difficult because at that weight, from the 154s to the 168, I mean, that's a deep pool of even untested talent at this moment, where I think Murguia is going to have to be matched correctly. And guess what? You always can't get them right.
No, you can't. And the thing is, if you're his management team, do you want to take on the big fish and possibly lose, or take on the smaller fish and possibly lose? You know, it's kind of a risky scenario. But you're absolutely right about Canelo. You're absolutely right about Canelo's popularity. One of my good friends in Mexico, he's a Chivas guy. He only watches boxing kind of on the periphery. And I remember years ago, this guy was talking about Canelo when he was coming up. But, you know, Canelo is a kind of a more anomaly. He's a European-looking Mexican guy. A lot of the people that look like that in Mexico aren't necessarily boxers because they're of a higher social class. And Munguia is obviously like a Native American, indigenous-looking Mexican who is like a lot kind of a less unique. So Canelo came out like with that kind of superstar, you know, attraction type thing from very early on in his career. Yeah.
Let me ask you this, Fernando.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. What do you think is going to keep him in the game? Because one thing I see with him is if he doesn't learn how to move that head and stop catching, you know, punches with his face, as young as he is, it's going to age him a lot quicker before we even see how good he can.
Hello? Broke up, David. I think broke up.
Yeah, David, you broke up.
So following up on what David was saying, I agree with him. There's a lot of work left with McGee. Believe me, I'm not a fanboy or anything like that. I definitely agree with David. There's a lot to be done. But I just think there's some talent there. He's got a good trainer in Morales, and does know what he's doing, because his dad was a trainer also, I think, former boxer also. You know, so he knows how to train. He knows how to the training regimen, right? And you could give McGee a whole year, maybe let's make it this year is make a break year. He's only 22 years old. Start him off with Toriano Johnson, Gabe Rosado, and at the end of the year or early next year, give him David Lemieux and see where he's really at. You know, what he does against a big aggressive puncher. You know, and I think that would be a bad game plan for this next year for Jaime. You know, keep him in some fun fights, and you're developing him. And a year from now, you see exactly where you're at. You know, he's only 22 years old. You know.
Yeah, I agree. I just don't know if the zone will be green lighting those type of fights with him as an A side on a main event card. But you know, I don't know the ins and outs of the business side of Munguia's contract, but I know that he's making a lot of money for these fights. So you know, I don't know what the zone's plan is for him. Look, I like Munguia. You know, I wish him the best. You know, like you said, he's going to have to rebuild, and I hate to use the word shot, Kenny, but I mean we were right there in upstate New York when he just got flattened by but we were ringside for that fight. You know, I don't need to see Stevens again. The problem I have with Lemieux for Mugia, Lemieux's gone up to 168 because he can't make 160.
Yeah, that's true. Good point.
Well, Curtis Stevens actually went down to 154 and lost. So you know, I I think you need to take on a guy that's fought for a world title at the kind of the names I was throwing out there. That could
Rosado,
give him some
Toriano
work in.
Johnson.
Yes, guys that will give him some experience and test them, but that he'll likely beat. That's me as a manager. Me as a fan, that's a totally different discussion.
Like with his own,
Got it. Got it. So, quick question for you, Fernando. What other fight? Let's move away from Munguia for a second. What other
okay.
fights are you looking forward to this year that are on the horizon?
Well, I'm looking forward to the Ryan Garcia card with
Yeah.
what's the face on the undercard? Jorge Linares, right? So that'd be a good. They're planning on moving. It seems like they're setting it up for that, for them to fight each other in the middle of summer, right? Hopefully.
Yeah.
And Ryan Garcia
Yeah.
already said he would like to fight Tank Davis at the end of the year, man. So looks like he's ready to come out of the shell. So
I was
that's kinda
really
exciting,
impressed by the Romeo Duno victory. I was not expecting that. I was expecting Romeo Duno to take him at least a few rounds. You know. Yeah.
I disagree with David about Alcazar. I thought Alcazar was a bad fit for him, man. Because he seemed like in those two fights with Alote and that English guy, he seemed really hesitant. Like he was like thinking the whole time. He seemed like he was really thinking in there. And I'm just watching the fight right now on the zone with him and Spike Sullivan. He's letting his hands go. He's kind of dancing around, moving his head a little bit. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, maybe there is a roof on him, but I just think there's some talent there. I don't think we should throw him in the garbage bin at all. I think there's something there.
There's definitely talent. I think the question though is whether or not he gets a title at 160. And right now I just see that as being a challenge.
The only guy I will see maybe is if Triple G's wheel fell off. Because Triple G looks like his wheels might fall off in any fight. Like
this
maybe
is
that
true.
would be like what. No, I agree. No. Yeah.
His main advantage at 154 was his ability to take punches and, you know, overpower guys that had moved up in weight to that weight class and weren't natural 154 guys. He left the division, you know, I think it was a combination of struggles making 154 and the fact that the bigger paydays are at 160. You know, again, I just don't see him being a champion at 160 right now. You know, and he's still young,
absolutely not.
but he's gonna have to develop. You know, the development's not something that usually takes place on world championship level major network cards as a main eventer. You know, maybe he can fight on Canelo's undercards for a bit. I just don't know whether he'll be willing to do that or whether Golden Boy will do it. But then I also don't know if the zone is going to keep paying upper six-figure paydays for him to beat up the likes of Spike O'Sullivan. You know, is that sustainable? You know,
no, I doubt it. No,
I just don't. I just don't know. I just don't know.
I think us as fans just put him on layaway. That's what I'm trying to say. Just put him on layaway, man. Like, let the zone worry about paying him or whatever. You know, give him a year. One thing about the zone that, like, you know, like us as boxing fans, right? Like, oh, you know, they don't have time to be showing this guy on the zone, right? Well, the zone's not like HBO. The zone, they show like 3 or 4 cards every month, right? So you know, whereas HBO would like have their whole schedule like surrounding one fight a month, you know. So I don't think it's the worst thing in the world if you know, like, you know, every 3 months to put him on there like in a kind of a throwaway card. You know, it's fun to watch. I enjoyed the card, the Pacman. I enjoyed it. You know.
Yeah, I mean, because Fernando, you're like me. We'll watch pretty much any boxing that's on TV, and usually enjoy aspects of every fight. You know, quick change of topic. Konaki Helenius was announced recently. What are your thoughts on that fight, Fernando?
I think that's just a big waste of time. I don't get it. Why aren't they trying to build this guy up to be somebody? You know, like put him in there with a true contender. You know, like supposedly they're saving him for a title shot against Deontay this year, maybe. You know, depending on what happens with Tyson Fury. You know, but how are you going to get excited for a pay-per-view with Konowski when he hasn't beaten anybody? You know, because obviously Deontay's going to be on pay-per-view no matter what. So if you're going to get on Deontay, you better be pay-per-view worthy. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, at least with the Areola fight, you're talking about 2 action fighters. You know, that Areola had a big name. He was kind of 2 chubby, overweight guys who threw a lot of punches and could fight. There was like an interesting aspect to getting people excited about that. I saw the article about Konaki Helenius. I mean, I've seen Helenius get beat so many times already. I mean, I guess the fact that Efe Ajagba's on the undercards an added kind of thing, maybe, but you know, I don't really know. I'm not that excited. I'm just not.
You know what would have been a good match for him is one of those guys that gave Fury a hard time last year. You know, those European heavyweights. I can see them.
Yeah,
you're
talking about Otto Wallin Konaki. Sign me up for that.
Yeah. See, that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about.
Konaki, sign me up for that.
You could actually sell to the pub.
Seriously,
or fight.
Yeah, or Oscar Rivas Kaunaki, or Michael Hunter Kaunaki. You know.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are experiencing difficulties with the stream with Blog Talk Radio. David, he has lost internet in his home and he's currently figuring out. We're trying to figure it out if we could get back online or not. At the moment, it's not looking too good. I may start the stream back up in a moment. For now, I am going to end the stream because the radio show is currently down due to the radio show being hosted in David's home in California, and David's internet is currently down. So We will be back up with the YouTube stream in a few minutes.